The mop slapped rhythmically against the polished tile, the sound echoing faintly in the empty high school corridor. It was past 9 p.m., long after the laughter, chatter, and chaos of teenagers had vanished into the night. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly, a dull hymn to the silence. Ethan Cole wrung the mop with calloused hands, his shoulders heavy not just with fatigue but with years of weight he carried without complaint. At 36, his face bore lines that didn't quite match his age, not the kind carved by time but those etched by sacrifice. His dark hair had begun to show threads of grey at the temples, not from vanity but because life hadn't given him the luxury of slowing down long enough to notice. He wasn't just a janitor at Maplewood High School. He was a single dad, a role he shouldered with both tenderness and ferocity. Every late shift he worked, every extra hour he stayed to polish, scrub, or unclog some stubborn drain, was for Lily, his daughter, his world. Lily was 8 years old, with a laugh that could split the darkest night wide open. She loved drawing flowers on scrap paper, believed peanut butter sandwiches could solve any problem, and had a way of hugging her dad so tightly that the rest of the world seemed to fall away. For Ethan, she wasn't just his child, she was the reason he kept going when exhaustion pressed like an iron hand against his chest. Tonight, as he moved along the hallway, his mind wasn't on the floors but on Lily's field trip scheduled for the next morning. She'd been talking about it for weeks. The science museum in the city, with its towering dinosaur skeletons and glass-walled planetarium. But the permission slip had included something Ethan hadn't expected: of the cost of admission, $15. It wasn't much to most parents, but to Ethan, who was already late on rent and whose fridge contained more empty space than food, it was another mountain. He had smiled when Lily handed him the form, hiding the sting behind his lips. "Of course, sweetheart," he'd said. "We'll make sure you're there." Now, as the mop squeaked across the floor, he wondered how. It wasn't the first time life had cornered him with impossible choices. Since his wifey Lily's mother had walked out when their daughter was 2, Ethan had learned to juggle bills, meals, and endless demands with a quiet grit. He never cursed his fate aloud. Instead, he cleaned not just the floors, the bathrooms, the locker rooms, but the invisible messes of the worries, the disappointments, the doubts. He scrubbed them from his heart, keeping it clear for Lily. He was midway down the hall when he heard a voice. "Mr. Cole?" Ethan turned. Standing near the trophy case was a boy in a Maplewood basketball hoodie. Tall, lanky, and fidgeting with the straps of his backpack. Ethan recognized him. Jordan Matthews, a senior, one of the star players. "Shouldn't you be home by now?" Ethan asked, friendly but cautious. Jordan shrugged, eyes darting to the floor. "I forgot my math book. Coach will kill me if I flunk out." Ethan nodded, resuming his mopping. "Happens." But Jordan didn't leave. Instead, he lingered, watching Ethan's deliberate movements. Finally, the boy said, "Can I ask you something?" Ethan glanced up. "Sure." "What's it like here? Broken bar, you know, being a janitor here?" "You always look like you don't mind it." Ethan chuckled softly, resting the mop against the wall. "Well, floors don't talk back. That's one perk. But it's not about liking or not liking. It's about doing the job that needs doing. People walk through these halls every day without thinking twice about who keeps them clean. And that's fine. I'm not here for applause. I'm here because the world doesn't stop needing to be cleaned up. Somebody's got to do it." Jordan frowned thoughtfully. "Still, doesn't it ever feel a broken bar unfair?" Ethan's gaze softened. He thought of Lily asleep in their small apartment, her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her arms. "Life's not about fair, it's about love. As long as my little girl smiles when she wakes up, I don't care what the world thinks of me. I care what she thinks." Jordan stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're different, Mr. Cool." Ethan shrugged. "Just a man with a mop." But Jordan carried those words out with him into the night, and unbeknownst to Ethan, they would echo much farther than the hallway. The next morning, Ethan woke early. He made Lily her favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs that were slightly too runny, toast with strawberry jam, and a single slice of bacon he'd saved from the pack. She bounced into the kitchen in her faded unicorn pajamas, hair a nest of tangles. "Daddy, guess what?" she chirped. "Today I get to see real dinosaur bones." Ethan smiled as he set the plate before her. "I know, Bug." "You excited?" She nodded vigorously, mouth already full of toast. But Ethan felt his stomach knot. He still didn't have the $15. After breakfast, he walked her to school, holding her small hand in his. When they reached the steps, Lily hugged him tight. "Don't worry, Daddy. You always figure stuff out." Her words pierced him like sunlight. He kissed her forehead and let her go. At work, Ethan asked his supervisor if he could pick up an extra shift over the weekend. The man shook his head. "Already filled." "Sorry, Cole." So Ethan did the only thing he could think of. On his lunch break, he walked into the cafeteria and asked the head cook if there were any leftover jobs he could do. She gave him a tray of unwashed pans and pointed him toward the sink. By the end of the break, his hands were red and raw from scrubbing, but he left with a crumpled $5 bill she pressed into his palm. 5 down, 10 to go. He spent the rest of the day cleaning harder than usual, as if sheer determination could make money appear. When dismissal came, he stayed late again, sweeping every corner, tightening bolts on squeaky chairs, fixing a flickering bulb in the teacher's lounge. And then, as he was finishing, Jordan appeared again. "Hey, Mr. Cole," the boy said, pulling something from his backpack. He handed Ethan a folded piece of paper. "Some of us were talking after practice. We think you're, like a broken bar, the real MVP around here. So we wanted to give you this." Ethan unfolded it. Inside was a collection of small bills, ones, fives, even a couple of tens. "Nearly $100. "I can't take this," Ethan said, his voice low, thick with emotion. But Jordan smiled. "You told me yesterday our life's not about fair, it's about love." "Well, this is us showing some back." Ethan stood frozen, heart swelling. He thought of Lily's face when she would step onto that bus tomorrow morning, permission slip in hand. He realized, in that moment, that sometimes cleaning wasn't just about floors. Sometimes it was about clearing away the walls people built around each other, about showing kindness when no one expected it. That night, for the first time in months, Ethan allowed himself to breathe a little easier. He tucked Lily into bed with the folded permission slip beside her pillow, already signed and paid for. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "I knew you'd make it happen, Daddy." And Ethan, with tears he didn't let her see, whispered back, "Always, Bug, always." But life had more turns waiting, ones that would test the limits of kindness, of selflessness, of humanity itself. Because Ethan's story of the single dad who cleaned more than floors was only just beginning.